home after work. Today I want to do a little bit of a catch up with our soup can challenge, our soup can at a mile or over a mile, the 1800 yards, where we're at, and a little bit of some explanations to go with it. Yeah, I suppose part of that is that it's probably the last, we've probably had the last shoot or last attempt at that last week, because it's now been raining, the crop's starting to come up, so we're probably not going to get another chance for 4, 5, 6 months type thing from this point forward, because we need the crops to grow, where we can't see anything and shoot amongst them to the harvest. Then after that we'll get back to where we can do this 1800 yard soup can challenge. So that's where we're at. We've got a fair few, want to try more, but I suppose I wanted to recap of what we've found and a little bit of what the whole process is about. And I suppose the whole process, listen, it's a bit about content, making stuff that's fun to look at and to view and to make and all that sort of things. There's also a little bit of making sense of things in the way of, I suppose, a little bit in reference to hunting. You know, the fact that that sort of distance is ELR hunting is not something that I feel is ethical or I would take part in, or I can encourage. And the logic comes into a little bit of what I'm trying to show with what I'm up to here. And I suppose part of that is the accuracy versus, what am I trying to say? There's a little bit in luck. You've got 3 cans here. There's 4 times we've hit the can. 3 times we've directly hit the can. Out of that, 5 times we have not hit the can. All of the rounds have shot very accurately. So that's the other thing. Accuracy of a particular round, what's more accurate than the other. This is not a challenge to say if it hit, it's more accurate. It's a winner because it hit. Because I truly believe once you're down to a half MOA group, or you're able to hold a 1 MOA group at 1 mile around the can, with conditions, with all the other bits and pieces involved, that's as accurate as you can get. That's as accurate as a piece of steel with a hole in it pushing a projectile down it from an explosion or rapid expanding gas just previously behind it. That's already phenomenally accurate. Beyond that point, there's a little bit of luck, holding your mouth the right angle, something else that goes on. And I suppose this one here, the 505 Gibbs shooting the 50 caliber projectile, getting on the 3rd shot, is exactly that. Shot very well, you know, shoot over there, correct, shoot again, correct, and hit it. But to just miss it would have been no less accurate, actually, for what's conceivable out there, talking about you work out your angles and what's conceivable in the way of accuracy, standard deviations, all that sort of stuff. Then there's a little bit of luck, but still it did it. A big recoiling, aggressive rifle did that. Cutting through the wind better? No, I don't believe so. If there'd been another 7 shots there, they wouldn't have seen a group probably worse than the little 190 grain projectile here, or even the little 109 grain 6mm out there, probably because of the recoil control. But there's a yin and a yang that goes with it, but it also talks about what the accuracy is possible. So what have we done? Yeah, this is the first hit that we got here, which was the 30-338, shooting the 245 grain 30 cal projectile. And I think that was the 5th shot. I've forgotten exactly. I'll have to go through the video and check that out. But that was pretty easily on their shot. It put enough pressure in that can when it shot, even though it shot pretty much as only not too much different exit hole versus versus entry hole. There is a dent at the bottom. That dent at the bottom was created by the little bit of pressure of that bullet passing through, which I'll get more into a bit, bouncing off the stand. There was a straight bit on the stand that caused that dent. It popped off and fell on the ground. So that's what that did. Didn't explode, surprised some people. The 50 caliber projectile, 750 grain 50 caliber projectile going through this thing, went through the top. So some people say there's air up there, didn't do it. No, well, it basically went through where the fluid was. It creased down the top there as going through. It put a hole that is a bit bigger, but not that much bigger than the 50 caliber. So it went through there where it actually, once again, it just knocked the can off. Not bouncing, there's no dents or things on the bottom, not bouncing, just knocked the can off as it went through there. But once again, didn't pop the can. So, okay, you could say it's to the top, you could say those bits and pieces. Still knocked it off, and all we get to see is the tumble at the same time as it hits the dust behind.
Oh, it knocked him off? Okay. What happened?
We're never certain. It's not like a pop when you're shooting at close range. And then to the extreme of this fella here, which is the one with the 303. 303 shooting 220 grain 30 cal projectile. Yes, we're running a 30 caliber in a 303 barrel. It works. It's a tiny bit difference. One's 308, one's 3 thou larger, but it's going through there without any problems. And that was the 3 thou smaller, I should say, but it's still sealing, going through it properly. That one there is this fella here, the 220 grain projectile. So 220 grain 30 cal projectile went straight through, and with the weight of the can and how easily that projectile slipped through, it didn't even knock the thing off the stand. Just sitting on a stand didn't even knock it off. So we didn't even know it was hit until that point. And once again, why is that happening, and why don't they explode? And I suppose there's a few details that's the two things that I want to touch on. One is going to be the overall thing of this shoot, which is showing the accuracy of all different creeds and kinds of calibers and projectiles and that sort of stuff. They're all working very well. Some are affected by wind more than others, some affected by recoil more than others, and listen, still getting really, really close to something that is, under 0.2 MOA at that sort of distance is amazing. And it always shocks me how accurate this old technology actually is. Getting on, there's luck involved. As simple as that. Hitting is got involved with luck, and yeah, you make your own luck, and there's another level of sometimes you can be a little less accurate and still hit something where more accuracy doesn't manage to hit it at all. Amazing thing to say, but I'm sure you've all been there where you've had a day at the range where you've got so close every single shot, and it's extremely consistent, but you can't get inside that quarter MOA group. And other days where you're shooting 1 MOA group, but you get 2 hits and you get 8 misses, but you still hit it twice. That sort of thing. That's a little bit what's involved with this sort of situation in the hits, and that's sort of part of what I want to show. But what it turns out, what I also want to show is, why is there no pop? Why is the can not popping? I explained it previously as to what people expect and what is reality, and I want to explain that in a little more detail today. One, when you're shooting a pressurized vessel, so a Coke can, a soda can, a pop drink, basically carbonated water or fire extinguisher, or all the different things that people shoot that go pop. There's pressure in them, and that means that you get what is called explosive decompression, or a form of it. Once you pierce a hole in it, then all the gas wants to come out in a hurry. So you combine that with an energy of a bullet passing through, and you end up with, 22 can literally pop a Coke can at 500 yards, because the two things happen. It's still got enough force to pierce the skin, and then the explosive, or the decompression, means that this pressurized stuff all of a sudden gets a way to go out, and it goes out in such a rush it pops things. So there's that. When you don't have that, and people who have experienced that, taken a drink bottle that they've shot before, but and they went pop, and they shot them at 600 yards, and they go pop nicely. But okay, this time around we've got some old drink bottles, and we've had a party, and we've got some drink bottles, so we'll just fill them up with water, put some color in, then go out and shoot them, and been there, and you've shot them, and you can't make them go pop, and you go and have a look, and they're draining of fluid because there are holes in them that have gone straight through. It's because they're not pressurized. So if you haven't been there, that is why you can get little screw-on caps that pressurize things so that they will go pop, but that's about that explosive decompression. What we're dealing with here is something that isn't pressurized, and we're showing, and this is very also relevant to hunting and how hunting projectiles work and why they work. It isn't just the projectile, it is about and it's to do with hydrostatic shock. It isn't just hydrostatic shock, but it's to do with hydrostatic shock, or more to the point, the amount of hydrostatic shock. And hydrostatic shock is a very simple term. It's a very simple thing. When you hit a body that is hydraulic, so fluid or semi levels of rigidity in fluid. So right down to a tub of ice cream, to a thing of grease, to air. You know, it's a hydro, so it's more on the fluid side of things. So you actually need the water to transfer it. And when you put a shock, you put of whatever form, a shock, a tap on this side, you'll feel it on the other side because it'll travel through the water as a shock. So that happens at all sorts of speeds. Water does transfer things. This is molecules pushing on molecules. But shock is moving into another level where you actually get a proper power that transfers through it to where we're talking hydrostatic shock that explodes things, creates wound cavities, pops things that are closer. So you can have this sort of thing, a bottle of water, whatever it is, at 20 yards, at 50 yards, out 100 yards, and in most cases, depends on what you're shooting at it, it's going to pop. And that's from hydrostatic shock to the point where the shock actually causes the fluid to run away from where it was hit. Not just transfer the shock, it runs away with it. So it creates, in some cases, a vacuum, some cases it'll drag in air from the wound cavity or the entry wound, but everything runs away, and that transfers energy to the other side of things, and that causes, as it goes out, or even just it'll cause things to pop because of the amount of hydrostatic shock. Now, hydrostatic shock is caused by largely two things. It's an impact that causes it, some form or other, and there's two things that are involved with it. One is speed, and you can transfer that into energy with weight and that sort of stuff. But basically, one is speed, how fast it's hit, and two is the area that it's hit with. So you take something like this 50 caliber projectile, and you hit it with the pointy end, and that's the bit that actually hits it. Yes, the whole bullet has to transfer into the fluid, but it can slide in very smoothly. Doesn't create a lot of shock, just slide in very smoothly. Just a tiny pressure increase through how big it is. Until you get enough speed. The point of it creates the shock point. It's not a very big point. You turn it around the other end where it hits like that, it's a lot bigger. You have literally 100 times the shock that it's got hit with. And so that is why a old style bullet, a round nose bullet, a hunting projectile, when it's hit something to make it flatten out, creates a more shock point. All that creates more of that shock, and you get that cascading effect of things running away, and you get a full, whether it's a wound cavity or it's a popping can or whatever it is. So that's about like I said, the speed and the area. When you have a Spitzer, which actually has a very small area, and then the speed that, even though it might be traveling in at quite a bit of speed, it's only expanding slowly. So this is where the speed thing comes in. And a true Spitzer projectile, we get a nice pointy Spitzer projectile. The maths on it is it needs to be going into that fluid to create a proper hydrostatic shock explosion, things pop, or wound cavity, that sort of stuff, to really create that hydrostatic shock in that runaway effect where it's actually trying to explode or trying to escape from where it was pushed into, rather than just letting things through like this, just letting things through, is supposedly around 2,200 feet per second. So, and if you have a rounder nose bullet, you have a flat nose bullet, you know, that sort of stuff, then that speed comes right back down to as low as 500 feet per second. You can come down to where it's very, very slow depending on the size of things. Another good way to understand hydrostatic shock and the shape of things, when you go the shape versus how it actually behaves, is, I don't know what the rest of the world called it. Over in Western Australia, we call it a bommy. And that's making the biggest splash you can in the pool. We're the same size, same shape, same speed human, but, well, I shouldn't say shape, but the same size and speed. Diving into the pool, you can go in with a little tiny splash if you do it just right, by getting yourself pointy like a Spitzer, or a bommy, which is where you make a flat area on yourself so it actually goes in, so it punches the water, to an extreme of a belly flop or a back flop, where you end up with a big splash, the transferring more energy into it, and rather than spreading it all out, then you go to bommy. So all the different names for bommies that there are, but creating to where you get a proper slap into the water and a boom, Well, that's the sort of similar place where you can understand that the shape of things is relevant to making a difference. And like I said, basically you send a very pointy human at very high speed, you're still going to end up with a big splash. So speed is also relevant. So what I'm going to do to make sense of that, there is physics involved with that, there's maths involved with that. One of the things I'll do, and maybe we can do this in the wet time while crops are growing, is take the same can, so we're using the same thing, use this bullet that slipped through here in the 303, it slipped through nice and neatly, and try it at, I don't know how far we can come in, we'll start at 1,000 yards and see what happens. I expect at 1,000 yards we're going to get a little bit of this effect, a little bit of a dent in it, but it's not going to pop things, it's still going to go straight through. And maybe it's 1,400 yards, I don't know where it is. By the mass of it, it'll be around 1,000 yards, and then come into 600 yards or 500 yards. And I think at 600 yards with the likes of the 300 PRC or the 300 Win Mag, about 600 yards, we get to that 2,200 feet per second and see what it does. In theory, by the mass of it, it should then pop because we have enough speed. Same bullet, same weight, same shape, same thing it's going through, and see when it is that is. And then that does come into a relevant thing for hunting. It is part of the deal. Being ethical comes into using bullets at the speed where they can still do their job properly, which largely is no further than 450, 500 yards. It certainly isn't 1,000 yards for hunting side of things, even though there's lots of energy, unless it has enough speed versus the shape versus all that sort of stuff to create that cascading hydraulic shock to cause that proper, actually punches thing, opens that big wound cavity, kills it properly, then the chance of actually simply wounding something where it has a little hole put through it, and then that being an unethical way to do what you're doing, are very, very high. So there's lots of other details. I've been through that with ethical hunting, that sort of stuff, but it is a relevant thing. And it's a little bit of, I suppose a tiny bit of what I'm showing here. It's more about having fun, challenging, trying the ridiculous sort of shot, making it work, teamwork, all that sort of stuff. But listen, there's a lesson to be learned. There's things to understand from it, and very happy to see if we can put it into something that makes it worthwhile content to watch as well. Anyway, guys, that's what I got for this one. Thank you very much for checking in. Put all your comments and all stuff below there. Great to hear from you. And other than that, we'll catch you next time.